Don't close this video yet. Stay with me for just a few more minutes because what I am about to show you here could change the way you understand every sleepless night, every door that closed without explanation, and every time you smiled on the outside while you were drowning on the inside. The fatigue you carry is not weakness, and it is no accident that you are watching this today. If you arrived here after scrolling for hours without finding rest anywhere, pay attention. Perhaps the rest you're looking for isn't in any more videos or any more distractions. Perhaps it is exactly in what I am going to tell you now. You have been feeling a weight you can't quite explain, haven't you? A tiredness that is born with you in the morning, even before the day begins. You hold up the house, hold up your children, hold up your aging parents who need you more and more. Hold up the monthly bills that never quite balance the way they should. Hold up the expectations of everyone around you. On Sunday at the family table, everyone expects you to be the strong one, the one who solves problems, the one who gives advice, the one who lends money, the one who endures an acid comment from a relative and still smiles afterward. And when there is finally a second left for you to breathe, no one asks how you are holding all of this inside. You became the pillar of the house, and a pillar cannot sway, can it? A pillar must stand tall, even when cracked within, even when on the verge of collapsing. And then there is the loneliness, that loneliness that makes no sense because technically you are not alone. There are people in your home. There are people in your group chats, at your church, at your work. You even have people to talk to about the game, the shows, the price of groceries. But when you really pay attention to what you feel, you realize that no one there knows what is happening inside you. You have learned to answer all good, thank goodness, on autopilot, even when it is a storm inside. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the loneliest person at a party is the very one in the middle of everyone? Smiling, talking, while internally counting the minutes until they can leave and finally breathe without performing for anyone? That is more exhausting than any manual labor, pretending to be upright when you are holding yourself together just to keep from falling. And the worst is when this loneliness appears inside your own church, within your own community of faith. You serve, you pray, you help, you arrive early to open the hall and leave last to turn off the lights, and yet, on the day you needed someone the most, no one noticed, no one called. You learn to pray alone in the car in the parking lot before entering your home again with your smile ready. And that is confusing, because you thought faith in community meant never having to go through anything alone again, and you discovered, in practice, that sometimes it is exactly the opposite. And there were the doors. You know which doors I mean. That project that didn't go forward for no reason that made any sense. That friendship that cooled off out of nowhere, with no fight, no explanation, just a strange distance you haven't quite understood to this day. That invitation that stopped coming. That job opportunity that seemed certain and crumbled at the last minute. You must have searched your own conscience for blame. What did I do wrong? Did I say something? Am I not good enough, strong enough, faithful enough? And found no answer at all. Only silence. And an unexplained silence hurts more than an explained rejection, because at least with an explained rejection you can process it. The silence, you cannot. The silence keeps echoing. Everything I'm talking about leads to one place, a concept I call the chosen one complex, turning your solitude into your greatest superpower. And in the middle of it all, there is a quiet voice you've learned not to notice anymore. So often does it repeat the same things. You are behind. Everyone else has figured out their life except you. Look at others your age. Look at what they've already achieved. You should be doing better than you are. This voice compares you to someone you are not, to a life that was never yours to live, and leaves you exhausted in a way that has no name, because it is not the weariness of the body. It is the weariness of trying to prove every single day to no audience at all that you have value. And this exhaustion does not stay only in the soul. It descends into the body. It turns into that tightness in your chest before sleep, that insomnia that makes you stare at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, reviewing conversations that ended months ago, that urge to cry in the middle of the grocery store for no reason you can point a finger at. You go to the doctor, the exams come back normal, and yet your body screams that something is wrong. No one taught you that spiritual exhaustion also weighs in pounds, in high blood pressure, in a locked shoulder. And often the body tired of carrying it alone is the first to warn you of what the mind still takes years to admit. I need to tell you something that perhaps no one has told you yet in these words. This combination, the exhaustion without logical explanation, the loneliness amidst the crowd, the doors closed without warning, the voice that compares and demands, is rarely pure coincidence. Scripture says in Ephesians 6:11 to put on the full armor of the Almighty, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. Schemes, not accidents floating in the air, not bad luck scattered without criteria. There is a deeper reading for the pain you carry, a reading that many people who have gone through what you are going through only recognize when someone has the courage to name aloud what they had already felt in silence for years. Here is what years of listening to stories like yours have taught me. When someone carries within them a greater calling, a purpose that hasn't even taken clear shape in the person's own consciousness, this calling usually attracts resistance long before the person manages to name it. You felt the attack before understanding why you were being attacked. You felt the isolation before understanding that perhaps you were being prepared, not discarded. And this changes the reading of everything, because it means your pain is not proof that you are insufficient. It may in fact be a sign that something in you was already too big to fit into the small spaces you insisted on shrinking yourself into, in the small roles others chose for you, in the minimized version of yourself you learned to wear, just so you wouldn't bother anyone. Perhaps this exhaustion didn't even start with you. Many people carry, without realizing, a weariness that came from before. From the mother who also held everything alone, from the father who also had no one to share the weight with, from an entire family accustomed to surviving in silence, with no room for weakness, with no right to ask for help. This is not a curse, it is not a sentence etched in stone, but it is a pattern, and patterns only repeat until someone decides consciously to stop repeating them. If no one before you had the courage to name this fatigue, to name this pattern, to break this cycle of carrying everything in silence, perhaps that is why you are feeling this weight, with an intensity that seems greater than your own story alone would explain. Perhaps you are not just carrying your own weariness. Perhaps you are the first person in your lineage with enough courage to put this weight on the ground and say, "Here, it ends with me." There is a Christian thinker who shaped entire generations by describing what he called severe mercy, the idea that at times the deepest love of the Almighty does not appear by easing the pain right away, but by allowing it to pull us out of places that seem safe, but which were actually keeping us small. Think about it. Could it be that the door that closed didn't close precisely to steer you away from a path that would have kept you the wrong size for the rest of your life? Romans 12:2 speaks of not being conformed to this world, but being transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transformation hurts. No one told you that when you started this walk of faith, that maturing spiritually might mean losing people along the way, losing environments that once seemed comfortable, crossing a desert without a map. But the biblical desert was never a punishment. It was a place of preparation. It was there that an entire people learned to depend on only one thing, not on people, not on circumstances, but on the very source of life. And perhaps that is what is happening to you right now, even if no one warned you, even if it feels only like loss, only like absence, only like silence. That is why I prepared a powerful ebook for you, because understanding this pain on paper is the first step, but crossing this desert without any tools in hand is what makes so many people give up halfway, thinking they failed when, in fact, they just lacked someone to explain the map. I wrote The Chosen One Complex, Turning Your Solitude into Your Greatest Superpower, thinking exactly of those who are at the point I just described, tired, alone, even when surrounded by people, not understanding why the doors have closed. The link is pinned in the comments and also in the description of this video. It is not about buying just another product. It is about stopping the attempt to go through what has long had written instructions all alone. If what I have said so far has touched something within you, write Amen in the comments now before continuing with me, because I want to know who is truly present for this word. But don't lower your guard yet, because the next territory where the enemy usually tries to corner you hurts more than any rejection from a stranger. It is your inner circle. It is the table in your own home. It is the group of friends of decades. It is that relative you would defend from anyone. It is the ministry colleague you thought was walking by your side. And before I talk to you about this, I need to make one thing very clear, because I do not want to confuse you or lead you to do anything rash. Not every fight is a spiritual attack, and not every person who disagrees with you is an enemy. Disagreement is not betrayal. Sometimes the distance you feel is the fruit of a conversation that never happened, of a hurt that no one had the courage to resolve, of a misunderstanding that grew in the silence of both sides. This also needs healing, and sometimes the right cure is reconciliation, a phone call, an apology, not distancing yourself. That said, there is indeed a different kind of bond. And you probably already know what I'm talking about because the body knows before the mind admits it. It isn't the person who disagrees with you respectfully. It is the one who only shows up when they need something and vanishes the moment you need them. It is that conversation that always leaves you more exhausted than you were before answering the phone, even when, on paper, nothing much happened. It is that relative who, every time you grow a little, a new job, an achievement, a peace you finally attained, finds a way to remind you of an old mistake, to compare you, to make you feel small again, almost as if your growth bothers them. Spiritual discernment isn't about cutting off everyone who challenges you or thinks differently than you. It is about recognizing through prayer, honesty, and if possible, frank conversation before any decision, which bonds build you up and which ones repeatedly drain you, with no reciprocity whatsoever, and having the courage to set boundaries where there is constant drainage, without guilt, and without needing anyone else's permission to protect your peace. And boundaries in practice almost never need to be an explosion or a definitive cutoff. Sometimes it is just a simple phrase said calmly, "I love you, but today I cannot solve this for you." Sometimes it is not answering the phone that very second, taking longer to reply to messages that only come loaded with demands. It is learning to say no without needing to justify the reason for 15 minutes. A healthy boundary doesn't scream. It simply stops over-explaining itself to those who were never truly willing to understand. That is why I prepared this powerful digital book for you. The Chosen One Complex, Turning Your Solitude into Your Greatest Superpower, has an entire chapter just on how to identify these patterns with wisdom, without turning into a bitter or truly isolated person, and without confusing healthy boundaries with vengeance. Because a well-placed boundary doesn't push away those who truly love you, it only pushes away those who only knew how to use you. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. If you have felt this firsthand, comment "My armor is up" and follow along with me because now we have reached the most important part of this video. Putting on the armor of the Almighty, as Ephesians 6 says, is not about war against people. It is about inner posture, about how you enter each day even before the day tests you. It is the belt of truth around your waist, so you stop accepting lies about who you are, including the lies you repeat to yourself in moments of despair, at 1 in the morning when no one is watching. It is the breastplate of righteousness, protecting your chest, the place from which emotions emerge, so you stop letting just any outside comment decide if your day will be good or bad. It is the shoes of readiness for the gospel of peace, because tired people, truly tired, need peace for their feet before they need any war strategy. It is the shield of faith, extinguishing the flaming darts, that sudden thought of "you won't make it, you don't deserve this, look what they did to you again, you never learn." It is the helmet of salvation, protecting your mind, because the real battle almost always starts there in your head, before it appears in any visible circumstance. And it is the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of the Almighty, because discernment without the word just becomes opinion, and opinion is as tiring as the loneliness that brought you here. In practice, this can be as simple as this. Before getting out of bed, before checking the first group chat, before the day's first demand, stop for 30 seconds and say, even quietly, even without feeling like it, "I will not carry this alone today. I don't owe satisfaction to those who only know how to make demands. And whatever comes against me today will not define who I am." It isn't a magic formula. It is a reminder. And a reminder repeated, day after day, becomes identity. Putting on this armor every day is neither a magical ritual nor an automatic formula. It is a practical, repetitive decision, often made without the slightest desire to do so. It is waking up and choosing, before opening any messages, any news, or any demands of the day, to remember who you are before remembering what you are owed, or what remains to be solved. It is stopping the begging for approval from those who never intended to give it to you. Have you noticed how much of your life you have spent trying to be enough for people who had already decided, even before they truly knew you, that you would never be enough? That ends now. Not because people change, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but because you stop needing them to change in order to breathe in peace. You no longer need to beg for a seat at any table. Revelation 3:8 speaks of an open door that no one can shut. It is not you who needs to force your way into anywhere. If the door is yours, it will open, without you needing to shrink, over-explain yourself, or prove your worth to those who have already decided not to see you. And here is a distinction few people teach. Spiritual authority is not arrogance, and humility is not erasing yourself. Many confuse the two and spend their whole lives apologizing for existing, thinking that is being humble before the Almighty. It isn't. True humility knows who it is, needs to prove nothing, and still serves with an open heart. Arrogance screams because it doubts itself within. Authority does not need to scream because it already knows. You can stop making yourself small to fit the expectations of those who only felt comfortable when you were little. That is not pride. It is maturity. It is the end of a lifetime spent begging for a place that was yours by right from the beginning. That is why I prepared this powerful digital book for you. Because putting on this armor alone without clear direction is easy to forget in the middle of the daily rush. We know the theory and forget it in practice, in the heat of an argument, in the exhaustion of the routine. The Chosen One complex. Turning your solitude into your greatest superpower was made for this, to become a habit, not just a Sunday emotion that evaporates on Monday. The link is pinned in the comments and in the description. Don't leave it for later, because delaying a spiritual decision is one of the oldest strategies in existence to keep you stuck exactly where you are now, waiting for a perfect moment that never arrives on its own. And if you've made it this far with me, I need to tell you one last thing before I end this video. The pain that brought you to this moment was not wasted. Every closed door, every friendship that turned cold, every night of exhaustion holding the entire house together alone, every time you felt insufficient in front of people who couldn't even imagine what you were carrying, all of this, combined, was molding in you a capacity to resist, to discern, to stand tall, that someone who has never crossed a desert simply does not have. This does not make you a victim. It makes you someone who has crossed over. And people who cross deserts recognize another desert from afar, recognize another tired person from afar, and that is exactly why the world will need you whole on the other side of this journey. Not the shrunken, tired, apologizing version you learned to be just to survive this far. Just imagine for a moment what it will be like a year from now, if you decide today that this cycle ends here. Imagine that same Sunday table, only this time you don't need to shrink to fit in. Imagine the same phone ringing with the name of someone who only knew how to make demands, and you answering in peace, without your stomach churning before saying, "Hello." Imagine yourself telling someone else, who is also exhausted, the exact path that led you out of that place, because that is what usually happens to those who truly cross the desert. In the end, they become a bridge for those who are still crossing. This is no distant fantasy. It is the natural result of stopping your flight from what you felt today and deciding once and for all to face it head-on. If you recognize this truth in your spirit right now, type 777 in the comments. Not because the number itself holds any power, but because I want you to record, for yourself, the moment you stopped seeing yourself as a problem and started seeing yourself as someone who had been prepared the whole time, even without knowing it. You won't go back to shrinking yourself in the same places as before. Not because you've become proud, but because now you know too much to pretend you don't. You understood that the fatigue had a name, that the loneliness had an explanation, that the closed doors made room for others that only you will be able to walk through, in your own way, in your own time. And this is the beginning of an authority that no one can take from you, with gossip, with silence, or with rejection, because it wasn't born from any human approval. It was born from within in the desert, far from any audience where no one was watching but you, and that which sustained you until now. That is why I prepared a powerful ebook for you. If these words reached you today, don't let this moment pass by as just another video watched and forgotten tomorrow. The Chosen One Complex, turning your solitude into your greatest superpower, is waiting for you in the description and in the pinned comment, not as a magic promise but as a practical map, so you won't have to cross this desert alone again, with steps you can apply at the next challenge, the next closed door, the next time loneliness strikes. If you feel that this journey has truly begun now, comment "I have been restored and sent," because that phrase marks for yourself that today was different. And if it was different for you, it tends to be different for those you love as well. Because almost no one carries true authority alone for very long, share this video with someone who also needs to hear this today, because you might just be the door that person is waiting for.